I've got a great lineup on deck with me here today, and we've done lots of preparation for this. We really actually have, but I'm going to throw it upside down and start with questions from the audience. So we've talked a lot today about how do we interact with people on their social media, how do we connect with people digitally as a broad topic, and now we're going to kind of dig into the whole mobile conversation and how that's really transformed our ability to reach people and hopefully drive towards a closer one-to-one type of marketing opportunity. So I want to open up, to begin with, the audience. What sort of questions are on your mind about mobile marketing? Is there something that's, anybody? Bueller? Oh, great, Mike.
Thanks. Hi, John.
Hey.
So a lot of smart people up on stage. So this is an interesting topic for me. So mobile, I saw the topic is mobile, right? So everybody talks about digital and mobile. I think 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it's the year of mobile, right? And it's been the year of mobile every year after that. And now it feels like we don't talk as much about mobile as we just do about digital, because they're kind of, used as both being one and the same. So for this topic, can you just kind of describe for me what do you mean by mobile? What specifically are you talking about on mobile?
Right. That's a great question. And I totally skipped over introducing my esteemed panel. So as each of you chime in, would you mind starting off with introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about you so we have an idea of your point of view and where it's coming from? Okay.
I'll start. Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Swanson, CEO and founder of Akey Technologies. Akey is a moment marketing science company. We try to use big data and artificial intelligence to really understand the mindset of a consumer so that we can connect with them with marketing on a mobile device. We believe mobile devices are extremely personal devices, which makes them very different than any other media channel that's ever existed. 1 in 10 millennials say that they would rather give up a finger than their smartphone. And that can tell you, how we have to communicate differently. So we try to understand everything we can about a consumer before we deliver them a message. And in many cases, we don't think that advertising should be presented to certain users at certain times at all. So our job is to find the optimal time for a brand to connect with the consumer.
And so that's one of the biggest differences in how mobile has impacted our ability to target, right? Right message, right time.
Hi, I'm Mark Fleisch. I work at Ground Truth, managing CPG and shopper marketing there. We're a mobile location platform, so similarly, we're looking at using a lot of location data and signals as a source of intent. So there's a lot of data. There's been a lot of data for many years on what you do online, sort of online actions. We really look at what you do offline. Where do you go every day? Where do you shop? What stores do you visit on a regular basis? Where are you loyal? That sort of stuff, and target people based on driving to the stores that you want to go to, the stores that we know that you shop at. So I think mobility. When I think about mobile, I think about mobility in the sense of location. To Scott's point, the mobile phone is so personal. You take it everywhere you go. So it really kind of not for the first time, but really, with the prevalence of smartphones and location data, we can really start to understand a really good picture of your offline behavior, kind of completing that 360 view of not only what do you do online, but also what do you do in the real world every day.
Mm-hmm.
Hey everyone, Matt Early, Shopper Marketing Manager at Tyson Foods, focused on Walmart. Mike, to answer your question, I do view mobile obviously as a smartphone. I don't look at it as a tablet or something like that. I think the shopper appears to be using a tablet like they use their PC, where they're doing an activity on it, but it's a more required activity that has a little bit more going on to it. So they might be doing more compelling long-term research on it, but they're not using that device as like I'm going into the store with my tablet, and they're not purchasing with that in mind. To build on what these gentlemen said, I do think that the mobile device gets obviously very specific, down to the person and down to the activity that they're doing. And it's an awesome time to be a marketer because now we get to be really granular about the way that we reach a person. And we don't have to be so spray and pray, I think, as Mary said earlier today. And it's awesome for that matter because now our dollars work harder for us. And I would say that at Tyson, we try to be, just like any one of the suppliers in the room, much more intentional about how we use those dollars because we're then able to get more back from our brands when we show them that we were high on the ROI metric, even higher than their national ads were in terms of driving a return at retail.
I'll introduce myself here in a second, but just to address, Mike, your question too, I think the biggest difference is between what we used to do as far as targeting IP addresses, whereas now it's at the device ID level. So the biggest difference, in my opinion, is the personalization of the offers and the ability to retarget both based on behavior and demographic, geographic, all the different data points that we know because the individual user is using that device versus a household, for example, that might be using a laptop or a desktop. So Chris Campbell, I work for Ibotta. We are a mobile shopping app. Our business has been in place for about 6 years. We're based in Denver. There are 3 of us in the room today that work predominantly with Walmart and Sam's Club shopper marketers to drive their business at Walmart. So that's our value proposition, really is taking budgets and moving shoppers into Walmart stores and then paying them back in cash once they purchase your particular product. So again, very invested, as you can imagine, in the mobile, not only the mobile app space, but the mobile media space. So that's what we do.
Hey everyone, I'm Bogdan Constantine, great to be with you. I was previously the founder of a company called Menguin. We were actually based in Northwest Arkansas, go NWA. If you guys remember the guy from Men's Warehouse with the beard, you're gonna love the way you look. He left Men's Warehouse, shocker, you haven't seen him on TV. He bought my company last year, and I spent the last year kind of scaling his portfolio of brands, which is Men's Warehouse 2.0 online, using SMS. And in particular, I built a conversational commerce platform, so we did suit and tux rental, right? We had to connect with a millennial customer who doesn't open email, who doesn't answer the phone, but wants what they want at the right time, at the right place, right, in the right medium. So scaled Menguin using that particular premise and looking kind of for, a lot of people talk about product market fit. We talked about what kind of our big thing was channel medium fit. How do you communicate with the right audience at the right time so that it's authentic and one-to-one? And that's what Voxy is. We're a conversational commerce platform via SMS that, based on your action, inaction, behavioral triggers, other data that these fine gentlemen have talked about, to do that exact thing. And Mike, to your question, I really think that it's not necessarily a subset of marketing. Mobile is where the consumer lives for the most part. So it's all about building an authentic connection with that person and giving them what they want, or maybe they don't know they want quite yet, at the right time, in the right place, via the right medium that is authentic and engaging with the brand. Because frankly, a lot of you guys sell to millennials and they can recognize canned BS in a heartbeat, right? So that's the key. It has to be an authentic, personalized message.
So how far into that personalization are we actually able to go? Because we can do a lot more based on location data, based on past purchase history, based on the fact that they've clicked on a coupon or an offer. We get a lot about their intent. How are we shaping and reshaping our messaging and getting it to a granular level so it is more one-to-one?
So I think that question actually helps us define a little bit more about what mobile is and why mobile is different. So separate from the fact that mobile is a personal device, or the mobile device is a personal device, it also represents an opportunity that's never existed before. And inside of the app environment in particular, we have device IDs. And device IDs tend to be very persistent IDs, and they're great in that they're not personally identifiable. People can opt out of them. And for those that don't opt out of them, which is the vast majority, we can collect information over a long period of time. So lots of location information about where they've been. Now with artificial intelligence, we can start to predict where they're going to go. And you can map that with all kinds of other different data points that you can collect from different environments to really get this really holistic picture of what a person is like and what they're likely to be interested in. In the same way that Amazon or Netflix or all these other great successful businesses now predict what we want and what we need, advertising really for the first time has an opportunity to fulfill on that goal. Personalization can be quite extensive with enough data, the ability to sort of know the likes and the desires and the experiences people are having that even go beyond just kind of local affinities. The first kind of versions of this were connecting with people based on sports scores. Your team just won, congratulations, sort of thing that helps people connect. But what about the people that aren't sports aficionados in a town, right? That message could land extremely flat for them.
But think about the experience where you've got the sports aficionado, right? And we really haven't put it in the context of craft, of game day. And how does that piece of data overlay, and how do we bring that into that conversation where they have the potential to be that craft shopper? I mean, it's a huge opportunity now.
I think it is, and I think probably the best opportunity or the best way that we can do that is to make sure that there are natural extensions that feel authentic for the brand, right? So if the brand isn't a game day brand, it probably shouldn't be engaging in game day. Otherwise, it will feel authentic and will land flat. So I think you have to find the natural extensions that you have with the consumers you're trying to reach.
Right.
Just a comment, I mean, going back to the device ID and really being that ubiquitous match key, essentially, that you can, tie all these different signals. And for me, like, the cool thing about mobile that got me into the space is just the amount of signals that you get from someone's phone. And it's all about relevancy. So, there's clearly you have to be smart about how you're using signals, like whether it's a location signal, whether it's, I know someone has Ibotta downloaded on their phone, so it probably makes sense to serve a message to that person and not to someone who doesn't. What does the weather look like in your current, in the market you're in? Being able to get like super hyper local, whether it's, supporting the Razorbacks here in Northwest Arkansas, or, kind of playing off of your local sports team or what have you. But I just think that the amount of data can be super overwhelming, but there's a lot of sophisticated partners in the space that are helping you make sense of that data and helping you understand what signals should you action on and what signals should you use to provide the most relevant message to that person at that particular moment.
And I'll piggyback real quick. The other big thing, we talked a lot about data delivering a specific kind of data set or a particular aspect of this consumer to serve them ad. I think the flip side of that is it's okay to ask that consumer what they want. Do you like football, right? That's a great icebreaker. If you think about talking to a friend, you wouldn't know that. Obviously we do because technology around what they're doing, where they are, all these different things, but that can also be a bit inauthentic at times, right? So just a simple prompt, something like that. Do you like the color blue? Do you like Mexican food, right? All these things are great icebreakers that can get that customer to engage with you on a one-to-one, human-to-human level. Because at the end of the day, that's who people buy from, right? They don't buy from your brand. I mean, they do to a certain extent, but they buy from people, right? They buy from the salesperson at Walmart who gives them a great experience, or Sam's Club, or whatever, right? Or the chatbot on a particular online retailer, et cetera.
Just two quick points there. I think that as buyers, you guys, as shopper marketing buyers from different tactical suppliers, you should be continuing to press those suppliers for building out and deploying more personalized solutions. I think that seems to be intuitive, but I know it's not always the case. So I would continue to do that. That's going to drive your costs down, obviously, of activation. I would say from our perspective, because we know exactly who the users are, we can then redeploy offers with a variety of different offer values in a variety of different time settings with a variety of content. And so that's going to be the case, I think, for all, not necessarily all, but the majority of mobile providers should be able to serve up content based on the purchase and the history of that particular user. Again, and then customize that content for that particular user. So that's my perspective on personalization. It should get to a point where it truly is a one-to-one situation because the content can be varied at that level.
And Matt, how has that kind of played out in your world? Because you're actually trying to construct many different tactics to pull into that one story, right? Where we get to that one-to-one, and you're using multiple levers to pull.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think each of the suppliers in the room will probably answer in a similar way, that obviously we want it all to work together and don't want any aspect of it to be independent unto itself. We're not hiring great vendors just for a tactic, just to achieve that tactic. We obviously want them to make those tactics work cohesively. Brad shared the example this morning, outed that there might have been some miscommunication on my briefs, but he said that he had worked with two other vendors in this space that were Bill and Mary about a program on behalf of Tyson. And thankfully, because of the way that they worked together, we were able to derive better results from that. And truly appreciative of that, just not the outing of the brief aspect. Yes, thankfully we can, kind of like I said earlier, with mobile get a little bit more targeted in the way that we approach shoppers. There's a recent example where we did go up against a Kraft Heinz brand with a very deliberate effort to try to pull from their shopper base over to our shopper base. And we were able to achieve that via mobile. There was one tactic within that tactical plan, there was Ibotta, that was garnered a little bit more towards that objective. The whole plan was holistic, but that aspect of it was really doing one thing specifically more than the others were. So there are certain tactics that achieve certain objectives, and so I couldn't ask my in-store signage to do all of the trading over of my competitor or trading up to my brand. Some of that is just not able to achieve that in the store. But thankfully, I could use a mechanism like Ibotta or Shopkick to pull over from someone else or drive up from private label, which is a battle that many of us obviously are fighting as Walmart and many other retailers continue to grow in their private label space. So kind of long way of saying, yes, thankfully you can be holistic nowadays in how you approach each of these marketing programs and use mobile as a way to achieve that. But I don't think you can ask mobile to do everything for you. I think it has to work hand in hand with all the other tactics that you could bring to the fold.
Right. When you think about the best-in-class kind of executions of where you've partnered with multiple tactics and pulled together the right solution, is there a good formula that you guys have participated in as a tactic, and you've worked closely with other, social or other kind of SMS type platforms where you've kind of made that great music together?
I'll take this. To be honest, we're just kind of starting to do this, I think, similar to Brad's point earlier, when we can come together, and really it starts with the suppliers. It starts with all of you to bring us to the table together. So we don't know what we don't know. We don't know that Ibotta is part of your plan unless you tell us, right? Or unless I call Chris and ask him if he got that same RFP. But, I think that, something that we're trying to do at Ground Truth, and we've been doing more of, especially as of late, is, our bread and butter is that location data, providing that sort of that offline metric of, did this person go to store as a result of being exposed to this content, whatever that might be. It might be an offer, it might be a social influencer campaign, it could just be, a display ad. But we can sort of, a lot of the times, we're talking to Shopkick, Ibotta, we're talking to social influencers who are on the stage, and those companies to say, hey, let's come alongside each other. You're going to provide your service, which is either an offer or some great content, but let us drive that in-store visitation and help the client understand, did this actually move the needle? Did this actually get people in store? And did I move product off the shelf as a result? And so to Matt's point, I think, it's incumbent on all of us to kind of come together a little bit more, because there's a lot of great point solutions in the space. But it's really that, how do we make 1 + 1 = 3? And I think it totally can if we're just able to be a little bit more collaborative together.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a little bit of a contrarian view because all of us are going to say mobile's great and mobile's amazing, and I'm going to be the first one to do that because I run a mobile company. But mobile also has some problems. The biggest problem is the screen size. It's tiny, right? And a lot of the video executions, are either in YouTube or Facebook, and that's kind of where they are, or they're in games, right? 50% of consumers in the United States play mobile games. And that's just like a reality that we all have to get right with and be cool with, because it's actually a great environment to advertise in, but most people are like, ooh, I don't know, that's not an environment I'm used to. So we have like a big problem, which is that people aren't watching TV anymore, especially young people. All their eyeballs are on these. I watch, Generation Z, and they'll be sitting in front of a TV screen that's a connected TV with Netflix, and they'll be looking at their tiny little phone. Like that's where they want to watch it, and that's where they want to interact. So we have a headwind. We have this small screen, and the opportunity inside of that small screen is to make amazing creative. But most of the creative that's getting produced for that small screen is not amazing. So when you talk about kind of bringing different constituents together, creative agencies, media agencies, vendors, clients, everybody really needs to get into a room and really think about ways that we can connect with the consumers on that small screen, because the creative has to be amazing, right? And because you just don't have as much time and as much space to connect with somebody. So I really encourage folks to really realize the problem and the opportunity that it presents, if thought through and really, is taken advantage of with the amount of innovation and the amount of data that we have that can inform that creative.
That's right, because the size of the message, you've got to put a lot into pictures because you don't have a lot of room for
have a lot of text either.
copy.
Yeah.
So to add contrarian to contrarian, so though we're on a mobile panel, and obviously you're going to get the message that mobile is important, which you already knew that, right? I will say there is an example that we, Tyson, will bring into the marketplace in the next few months. So I'm not going to say the brand, but I'll say it's in a frozen category, and what you'll see, actually, probably none of you will see it because you're certainly not the target. But we are not using mobile or digital or social or any really of the great vendors in this room except for a couple. And we are going very old school with it because the shopper base for this particular product is a fixed income, is 70 and over, and they are not going to see a digital ad, and they're not going to open up a smartphone app, and they don't have that. We've looked at the Nielsen Spectre data on this particular shopper. That's not who they are. And so as much as I wish that that's how I could target them, because I love these great digital tactics, I'm not going to use them for this particular program because I'm not going to end up reaching them ultimately. And so we are literally going to be doing an FSI and a direct mailer against this. And it feels so strange, and there was so much conversation internally about, are we sure this is the right thing to do? Because obviously it's very atypical, and it's very against what now you know to do as a marketer. So I don't have results yet, obviously, because it's not out in the marketplace, but I'm looking forward to seeing what this does. Now, I think, as I talked about this with Joan before today, she brought about, well, then how are you going to grow? It's a very valid point. But not everything has to be about growing the category. Sometimes the buyer just needs us to maintain the category. And if we are a big player within that category, then maintenance is sometimes the objective they need from our brand. Now, I wish I could also be the same brand that's growing in the category, but this particular one, I don't have a brand that's growing in the category, so I have to at least maintain it. And I know that sounds like a very old school thing to say, but that is really the truth. Some things, I just have to go back to what works for the shopper. And in this case, the shopper was not in the mobile or digital space, so we'll see what happens.
And my argument was that, well, there's 50-year-olds that might like to use that product too, and she might be on mobile.
Not just 70 plus?
Not just 70 plus, right? Yeah, but it's a valid argument that there's definitely the omni-channel approach, or meeting your customer where she is the challenge, right? And that's how mobile is definitely being applied to meet the shopper where she is in most cases these days. Yeah. Okay. What else would we like to talk about today? Like, I wanted to talk a little bit more about creative, because I think the creative story and aligning that one-to-one message, and I want to point this to you, Bogdan, to start off with. How do you get the right message in front of the right shopper? How do you know what is the right message?
That's a great question. I think a lot of it comes down to understanding who the shopper is. So Matt made a really good point. When you're talking to a 70-plus-year-old person, it's a very different creative, right, or medium, in this particular case, mailers, which are great, where there's any scratching, any type of engagement.
No scratching this time.
That could be cool.
No hashtags either.
There you go. But figuring out what is my customer journey and to what customer, right? Who am I actually going after? Is it the 70-plus, 25 to 35, whatever? And then kind of going back from there, we talk a lot about, well, what do I want them to do? You know, I want to buy craft for game day. No, I want them to have a great time and have a really memorable experience at game day, and then in that process involve craft. Okay, so let's backtrack. How do we do that, right? So thinking through it that way, and then backtracking even more, well, what's going to do that in an authentic, meaningful manner? So is that content? Is that video? Is that some type of beautifully creative, right, imagery of some sort, overlay, whatever? So it all comes down to backtracking. What is my goal? And it doesn't need to be my goal as a company. What is my goal for the experience that I want this consumer to have on their mobile device via my brand, or that my brand can assist with, right? So I'll use kind of my old CMO hat. You know, we did suit and tux rental for weddings. I wanted the bride, who was actually the core decision maker, even though we were selling to the groom and 7 groomsmen, she was actually our buyer, go figure. But what did I want her to do? I wanted her to rent my suits or tuxes, but why? What was I selling her? I was selling her security, right, for her big day, making sure that random tux rental company or the Men's Warehouse wasn't going to mess that up for her, right? So how do I do that? Well, I'm not necessarily just selling her my tuxes, I'm selling her a lifetime of memories. We realized early on that all she cared about was that the pictures look great. So all of our creative was phenomenal when it came to immaculate looking groomsmen, things like that for our brands. And then when we compared them to our competitors, we would find basically guys from the 1980s wearing, you know, powder blue tuxes that were very baggy, right, as a juxtaposition, right? So figuring out what did she really care about, and we did that through focus groups. Actually, the biggest thing that I did as a CMO, and I'm convinced it was the only thing I did really well, is I talked to a customer or a prospective customer every single day. So I was fortunate, we got those lined up. As we got bigger, I had a team that could do this, but basically everyone knew at 10 o'clock, I was bribing a customer with some type of gift card and interrogating them for anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes, prospective customer that didn't use us, customer that did, and just learning from them, right? Getting that real-time feedback. It's just one person, but that's a really valuable, really valuable wealth of data, because that one person isn't just going to fill out or check one of the 4 checkboxes on the survey, right? Or why did you say this? Or why did you reply? I get to dive in. You said this, why, right? And I get to hear the inflections in their tone and all these different things.
So that impacted your creative. That was
All of
that
it,
informed
yes.
what your creative messaging should be.
Bingo.
Right. And I don't think that happens often enough, is that we're looking at those segments and dissecting what those segments and the key messaging should be and how it should be different with each microsegment in our audience.
And I want to caveat, we had the data afterwards when we would launch this new creative. We were always A/B testing, right? So we had this culture, we were a startup around constantly testing, right? What is our control? What is the variable we're testing against? And we were always comparing the two. So while the customer could also tell me something, the data would ultimately give me the right answer at the end of the day.
Just one caveat to that. I think it's interesting. Historically, and I think others have seen this too, there can be a downside to content as well if we're not cautious. And let me give you an example. When we started the company, we were having our shoppers essentially unlock 3 different tokens, so 3 different brand engagements. So they were having to spend a substantial amount of time doing that. And what we found was it wasn't great because we were having quite a few drop off. And so we then moved to 2 brand engagements, and now we're essentially down to a single brand engagement, or even the user just going straight through the offer and being able to redeem without any type of marketing content at all. So I guess the caution there, and it goes a little bit back to what, I can't remember who was talking about the specific KPI for the program, is we tend to find in the case of innovation, you do need to tell the user about your product and about your brand and why it's great for them and why they should buy it. For the most part, in the case of a base product that you're trying to drive loyalty against, content is not as relevant, at least from our perspective. Keeping them in the franchise is important, but providing that new information, new content isn't as relevant. So just something to kind of consider as you, and that's not just with our app, but that's across the board with all, I think with all mobile content in general.
Yeah, and I could add that I think a lot of suppliers do get very focused on the big idea coming through to retail and other tactics in the exact way that it was envisioned at the big idea level. And I think that is aspirational and awesome. However, is that the right thing for the shopper? Do they need to see the big idea concept line in this shelf flag in the store? Do they need to see that in your digital ad when they are at home? Is that what they need to see? Or is it something that's right for what's going to actually drive conversion? And I think that sometimes just out of the fact that we have a lot of projects, we have a lot of brands, and we have a lot of work to do, we often take the easy route, right? And we just say, yes, the national idea is coming through now at retail with a little bit of a Walmart spin on it.
Put a Walmart logo on it.
Exactly. And I don't think that's the right solution. I think you have to take a step back and think, is this achieving the purpose that I'm setting out for it? Is this working hard enough for us? And sometimes the answer is no, because we just took the national line and applied it at retail.
Yeah, I mean, I was just, I talked to a lot of clients, and this is very daunting, right? To think about one-to-one messaging, like, do I really need to serve a different ad to every single person I reach, which can be millions of people? Very daunting, right? And I would just say, to start small, like, try a few things, do some A/B testing, maybe try 3 different creatives. There are partners on the stage that can also take the assets that you have and apply their technology to it. So we do dynamic distance ads, things like that, where we're just taking your asset, but we're telling the user how far away from store
So
they are.
talk about that. So how do you use dynamic distance to change the messaging? And what does that what does that look like
Right,
for a
and
customer
so,
experience?
when we're serving an ad to a user, typically we know what store they like to shop at. So we will serve a dynamic distance and say, hey, you're 2.2 miles away. That's a really easy way to kind of use location, but we also use weather a lot in the context of our creative in terms of, we work with a lot of beverage companies. So for beverage, there's an insight that, sales for 20-ounce Mountain Dew Pepsis go through the roof once it's 75 degrees or warmer. And so we'll do weather triggered creative. Not only do we turn the ad on once it hits that temperature in that market, but in addition, we'll throw the weather, current conditions of the weather inside the ad. Said, hey, it's a great day, it's a nice day outside, drink some refreshing Coca-Cola or whatever it might be. So, again, it's just kind of like, we're not really changing all that much with the ad, and a lot of times we're taking a lot of the assets that we're getting from the big idea, from the brand itself, and we're just making small tweaks based on what we know about that user, and again, the context of the environment that they're in, where they are physically, where they've been, and what are the weather conditions, and making really small tweaks that make that big brand idea a lot more relevant to that individual, just based on a couple, minor things that we're looking at. So.
Okay, so I'm going to really throw it on its ear because, I'm totally off script. Surprise. What do you ask your vendor partner when you sit down, or Matt, what do you try to make sure goes into the conversation when you're trying to figure out what's the game plan? How do we plan this path to purchase so that I end up getting the right message to the right segment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be redundant, but I really do. My ask of every program and every vendor that we get to work with is really to achieve the role that they're trying to achieve, that we're setting out for our program. So overall, we have the objective, right? And hopefully it comes through clearly on a clear brief. But hopefully, too, there are going to be facets that one vendor is going to be better suited to do versus another. An in-store tactic does not do the same thing as an out-of-store tactic. They shouldn't. So really, there should be a nice complementarianism between a lot of the folks in this room that are working on behalf of great suppliers to do your aspect of the program and work well with the others who are playing at the table to ultimately drive the overall objective. I don't think it's realistic to assume and to think that one shop can do everything that you're trying to achieve for your brand. I mean, I think that there are many vendors who are trying to be that with their scale and their size and their scope, but I just don't think that it's realistic. And that still, there's benefit to a little bit of differentiation and fragmentation for the sake of ultimately achieving different objectives. Not fragmentation for fragmentation's sake, don't get me wrong there, I don't want that. But something that has, X working with Y to achieve Z. That's hopefully what's happening on behalf of our brands.
Right. When you think of, I think that was me, sorry. What about the post-purchase experience? So you've now had somebody who's made a purchase of your brand or with your client. How are we building out that post-purchase experience? How do we stay in contact with that shopper? How do we use that data to continue to build the relationship and the loyalty with the brand?
I'll jump into this real quick because this is actually one of our main use cases. Kind of interesting stat, 91% of dissatisfied customers don't actually tell you they're dissatisfied. They will literally just never talk to you again. They'll refund and just like, I don't like this brand, bye. So it's very imperative that you stay on top of it, and as soon as, say, the product is delivered, received, whatever, you have some type of delivery confirmation, you follow up and say, hey, what did you think? How did you like it, right? And just build that conversation in a way that's authentic. Kind of an interesting use case, one of our brands that we work with is a coffee delivery startup, and they basically want you to buy more and more coffee, so they automate like a text that goes out from a barista that says, hey, did you like your Onyx? They actually have Onyx, they're out of Chicago, which is cool, but did you like your Onyx, Ethiopian blend? Yeah, awesome. Could you taste the subtle orange notes or whatever? I'm making this up, but and building that like authentic conversation with the customer, so where when you ask them, do you want another bag? Or do you want me to recommend something else that might pair well with that? It's an immediate yes, right? Or I didn't like it. Okay, great. I've got something else for you that I think you'll like instead. It's a really important data point you gave me. Just finding a way to have it be conversational, that post-purchase follow-up in a way that's like a friend. Hey, what'd you think of that new restaurant? Did you like it? That's really, I think, the key to all of that.
And how does that manifest in like increase in sales? Like what have you seen?
Massive. So that coffee brand that I was before, they had an 8% reorder rate. Now they're up to 42%. Wow. So pretty big. That's just one data point, obviously, but it's a really important aspect of staying, kind of being in the customer's kind of awareness zone is what I call it, and being there because they're going to forget. Everything is fighting for the consumer's attention, from our phones to our smart TVs to literally the mail and everything. Right? There's millions of potential impressions from all these different brands that are bombarding your consumer. How do you stand out in a way that's authentic and genuine so that they give you a minute or two of their time during the day to engage with you and give you what you need to better service them? But that's exactly it. Great question.
Does anybody else want to jump in there?
Yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of time just trying to get them to the purchase and not as much time afterwards. So if our job is done, if we get the purchase done, but I think it speaks to a larger strategy, which is that, your purchase funnel has to be, completed in order, right? Just like baking a cake, if you do something out of order, the cake falls flat or is too hard or too soft or just not delicious. So in the same way that you want to drive awareness at the top of the funnel and you would want to drive loyalty at the very bottom of the funnel, if you deliver awareness building messages at the bottom of the funnel or reminder media at the top of the funnel, it's never going to be as effective as it could be, and you're going to have that flat or hard cake. So I think mobile offers us the opportunity to be sequential for the very first time, right? For the very first time, we can know that that person saw a video and completed watching it, and they know about the product. They have the awareness that they need. We also might know that they spent some time learning about the product, right? So that they spent some time investigating it, comparing it to other competitors, things like that, so that they're further down on the funnel. That you reminded them, that you used lots of kind of, top of mind reminder media to keep that in mind, and then that you continue to do so to build loyalty once the purchase has been made. So I think mobile actually, for the first time, is the first medium that allows us to message at the appropriate time on the funnel with paid media. And I think that's the big opportunity. And if you do the reminder media at the top and the awareness media at the bottom, you know, it's just not going to be as effective as it could be.
So I obviously don't spend as much on post-purchase as I do on pre-purchase and current purchase or in the middle of purchase. That's obviously where the lion's share of the budget goes, not in post-purchase. But it is still an important aspect, as Scott said. I think it can be done well using mobile and can be done very intentionally, and you end up walking away with this very favorable view of the brand because then it didn't just feel like a transaction to get you to buy a product and that's it. And so kind of to that point and taking it a little bit to post-program analysis, even in your test and learns, don't just use that as, okay, we executed X tactic and it was a nice experience to do something different. There was a little bit of a flash around it within the organization because we'd never worked with X group to do this thing. But even when you do those test and learns, try to derive as much from that as you can that can benefit other brands and the brand that you work working with. Get as much data out of that as you possibly can so that you're not just executing it for a very short-term mindset, but that you're taking long-term learnings that can benefit everything within the organization. And in fact, as much as it is possible, take it back to your national brand teams and tell them what you gained from it because it may help their national advertising. And we've seen that done where our brands have been very receptive to the work we've done at the shopper level, and they have gained some insight that they would not have gained unless they had entrusted us to do those programs. And so that helped inform their national ads going forward. So try to pool as much as you can post-program, and really I would advise you to have as much of a good rigor around an analysis afterwards so that you see what worked, what didn't work, and how that benefits all of your future activity.
Yeah. I think we're almost out of time. Are we almost out of time? So, but I think just to kind of summarize that, I think it's like beginning with the end in mind, but also realizing that once we've had that initial transaction, that's your first opportunity to sell them something else in your portfolio, right? Or expand or get them to try something more. So collecting the data about the shopper, not just the IP address, but email address, you know, if there's a way to get their phone number so that Bogdan's capabilities can kick in. All of those different pieces become a part of the story, and we're building out not just a transaction, but almost a loyalty platform to continue the relationship with the shopper and enhance their experience at the same time, making it relevant. Yeah. Anything else?
Just,
yeah, go ahead.
I would say this is more broad than this panel, but I would speak on our behalf and on the behalf of the other sort of tactical suppliers in the room is that I think if each of us can make an effort to share those successes across the different partner programs we're working on, and I know we probably don't do as great a job as we should, but if we can all come together to share the success that's going on with pre, during, and post and how that's supporting our clients' objectives, I think we'll be a lot better off, not only in securing more business, but in actually meeting the client KPIs. And then the last thing I would say is, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but direct mail, it's an incredible way to go. So if you're considering where you want to spend your marketing dollars, you're going to want to probably allocate a higher percentage to that in the near future.
You know, no, what Chris said, the first part of what he said, much more important part, it was about raising the game. And I think that obviously, thankfully, Walmart has grown traffic, and we're all benefiting from that organically. I think that Chris's push about raising the game between even vendors does have a beneficial impact to each one of us, especially on the supplier side. I was in Chicago last week with the rest of our shopper marketers and our brand teams, and they were all very surprised at the amount of partnerships that are happening from our Walmart team. And I kind of reminded them that it is a small community, and by definition, you know everyone in the area and that works in the space. And so even though, yes, you're technically sitting at the table with competitors, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't gain from them and learn from them as well. And so I do echo what Chris said about share knowledge and share expertise as much as it is beneficial to those whom you call on and work with. And ultimately, that should benefit suppliers, who then ultimately that should benefit Walmart and the different retailers that we serve.
Thank you very much. I think we're out of time for questions, but I know all of these gentlemen are around, and I'm around for the rest of the day, and we would look forward to any questions that you want to ask us at that point. All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys.